That night in a bar, I met my friend from secondary school again. She told me a story about a ghost. Lena's parents used to work in a big textile factory. She often studied in a public school downtown. Because of the insolvent company, her parents had to find jobs in other places, which were far from her school. Therefore, they usually picked her up late. One day at school, a boy named Tom introduced himself to Lena and asked her to play games with him. As they were the same age and Tom was very friendly, Lena was delighted when she had a friend to play with. Very soon it became afternoon, and Lena's father came to pick her up. Lena said goodbye to Tom, and they left with her father. The next 2 days, Lena met Tom again. Lena wondered about Tom's parents. Why didn't she see them? Tom told her that his parents were very busy, so he usually went home alone. Then the two of them played in the sand in the yard, and after a while her teacher said, "Your mom will pick you up early today, so you shouldn't play in the sand alone." After the teacher left, Tom immediately invited Lena to discover a factory next to the school. He wanted to share a secret with her. Lena hesitated for a moment about Tom's suggestion. She thought, my mom and teacher will be angry if I go too far. But not waiting for Lena to reply, Tom quickly held her hand and ran towards the factory. Tom took Lena through a secret passage to the factory. Getting inside, Lena felt very excited. This place was a mystery to her. Tom took Lena a bit further. They saw a huge, abandoned factory. Even so, the little girl was still very scared. She wondered if they were allowed to be in here or not. She was about to go back, but suddenly Tom quickly grabbed her by the hand. He pointed at something and asked Lena if she had seen it. Following his hand, she saw a very cool red toy car. As soon as she saw it, Lena was fascinated. For a long time, she wished to have a car. Her family was poor, so her parents had not bought any toys for her before. Playing with the toy for the first time, she controlled the car smoothly and quickly. It was so fun, so she forgot all the teacher's words. Then, the car sped out of control and into an old blue iron door and stopped. Lena felt very strange. She didn't understand what made the car stop so abruptly, so difficult to control. The little girl ran to pick up the toy. She held it and looked at the door curiously. When she looked up at her friend Tom, he seemed very strange, with an expressionless face and wide open eyes. Tom's eyes increasingly appeared more and more blood red with horror. Then Tom suddenly shouted at Lena, "Find me!" Tom's face now scared Lena to death. The little girl stepped back. Lena did not think that Tom was so aggressive with her. She was so confused as to what changed. Then Tom turned his back to go inside that old blue iron door. The door was locked with iron chains, but it was so easy for that child to get through it. Left alone, Lena stood outside and looked at the door for a long time. Her arms still hugged Tom's red toy car. Thinking Tom wants to play hide and seek with her, Lena immediately snuck in to find him. The space on the other side of the door was wide and completely empty. It was so quiet, except for the sound of her own footsteps. The little girl looked around the huge, wide space, and she wondered how she would ever find her friend. In this strange place, Lena could not control her tremble. Holding the toy in her hand, she became more and more frightened. Lena called out to Tom and begged him to go home with her. She did not want to play hide and seek in this scary place anymore. Responding to Lena's words, there was an echo from the deep inside the factory. It was Tom's voice. He wanted Lena to go inside and find him. Although she really wanted to leave the factory as soon as possible, Lena was very scared and she did not know how to get out of there without Tom's guidance. She decided to find her friend. But the moment she took a step, a familiar voice rang out. From outside the door, Lena's teacher suddenly appeared. It already turned dark outside, and the factory, with the teacher, seemed very worried because the iron chain was locked, which did not allow her to enter. Lena hurried towards Tom's voice. She told him that the teacher had come and they should go out together. However, replying to Lena was her own echo. There was no sound, no one there except her. The toy was still lying on the ground, but Tom did not respond to her. Lena really didn't want to leave Tom there at all. He hides very well, Lena thought. Outside the door, Lena's mother appeared and urged her to run out. Lena's mother looked bewildered when she heard her little daughter was talking to someone. She did not want to wait any longer. Lena left the toy car and said goodbye to Tom before going out. Then she followed the gap in the door and got out. Seeing her daughter come back safely, her mother was so happy. She had heard many stories about the factory, which was rumored to have cannibal monsters. At home, Lena's mother asked her to tell her everything. Her mother was very surprised and disappointed because Lena had played at the factory on her own without permission. Lena's mother got angry. If she was late, what would have happened to her little daughter? Lena's mother was angry because Lena didn't listen to her. She also thought her daughter had lied to her. Feeling sad, the little girl only knew to stare at the ground and listen to what her mother was saying. That night, in a dream, Lena found herself walking into a dark place. It was cold and foggy. There was a very sad boy sitting and holding his knees. She recognized him. Tom. As soon as she saw Tom, Lena was very angry because that afternoon he left her alone in the factory and later got scolded by her mother. When Lena was about to question him, suddenly Tom turned his face towards Lena. His face looked awful. Blood covered most of his body and had completely dyed all of his clothes red. Suddenly, Lena woke up from this nightmare, and she was sweating all over her body. But outside, Lena heard her parents arguing. Her father claimed that her mother was superstitious. A cannibal monster in the factory? But the mother still insisted on keeping her point of view about the monster. That night, Lena slept with her parents to avoid nightmares. Her parents were still very angry at each other because of the argument. The next morning, as soon as she woke up, her mother said it was not necessary to go to school anymore. Lena was going to live with her grandmother for a while. Later that day, her mother took Lena to her grandmother's house, which was more than 5 hours away from the city. All procedures for transferring schools and entering new schools was going to be completed by her parents soon after. A week later, Lena began to get used to the new environment, the new school, and her new friends. One day, on the way home from school, she was attracted by this information on the newspaper stand. There was a picture of a dry skeleton whose outfit is very familiar, and there was also a red toy car next to the skeleton. All of them were very similar to Tom. It was written in the paper that a body of a boy who was believed to be missing a few months ago was found. People thought that the boy fell from above with a toy car after sneaking into the abandoned textile factory. Tom had been in this lonely and cold place for so long, and he just wanted to play hide and seek with Lena.